Welcome to Heart Over Gold, the channel where love, kindness, and humanity shine brighter than any fortune. In today's story, Lucia Hale's life was shattered when Robert Foster, a wealthy millionaire, accused her of theft and betrayal after discovering she was pregnant. 5 years later, Lucia, now a respected pediatrician, stunned everyone by accepting an award for her Mothers of the Future project, standing alongside 4 children who looked strikingly like Robert. The truth about their past, and the children's, parentage shocked those present. As Robert tries to make amends, seeking forgiveness and to reconnect with his children, Lucia is forced to confront the painful past and her struggle to trust him again. This is a story of redemption, second chances, and the complicated journey of forgiveness as they rebuild their family. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments and keep up with our latest stories. A wealthy millionaire ruthlessly humiliated his maid, accusing her of stealing and plotting a scam after learning she was pregnant. He kicked her out of his life, discarding her as if she were nothing. Fast forward 5 years, and at a prestigious gala, the same woman stunned the audience by walking onto the stage to accept a major award. But she wasn't alone. She stood with 4 children whose features mirrored his own. As the truth unfolded before everyone, the revelation took an unexpected twist, leaving all who witnessed it in shock. 5 years had passed since Lucia last set foot in these upscale streets, breathed the air of the privileged. At 30, she was no longer the young, timid cleaning lady in her faded uniform. She was Dr. Lucia Hale, a respected pediatrician specializing in neonatology with a complete residency and a professional reputation that earned her the respect of even the most seasoned colleagues. But despite her success, her heart pounded with nerves. "Mom, are you nervous?" Her daughter Livia's clear voice cut through her thoughts. The 4-year-old, blonde like her, held onto the hem of her lab coat, her blue eyes peering at her with an unnerving, childlike perception. "A little, sweetie," Lucia said, crouching down to her daughter's level and smoothing her golden curls. "Mommy's going to receive an award today. It's important." "Are you going to be famous?" asked Caleb, appearing next to his sister. His tousled brown hair and dark eyes, so similar to the father's, made Lucia's heart ache. "Not famous, darling. He just recognized for my work," she replied with a soft smile. Lucas, always the sharp one, adjusted the small tie of his child-sized suit. "It's for the Mothers Project, right, Mom? The one you keep talking about on the phone?" Lucia's heart warmed at her children's attention to her work. The Mothers of the Future project, born from her own experiences, offered medical and psychological support to single mothers in vulnerable situations. In just 2 years, it had served over 500 families. "Exactly. And you're my biggest inspiration for all of this." Lara, the quiet and sensitive one, kissed her mother's cheek. "We'll cheer for you downstairs, Mom. Aunt Carmen's going to record everything on her phone." Carmen, the 62-year-old neighbor who had become like a grandmother to Lucia's children, waved from her seat in the corner of the VIP waiting room. She was the one Lucia trusted most with the kids. "Ready, darling?" Carmen stood up, adjusting her bag. "They'll start calling the honorees soon." Lucia took a deep breath. Tonight's annual charity gala at St. Clara's Hospital brought together the city's elite, medical professionals, business magnates, and notable philanthropists. She greeted some colleagues and acquaintances, maintaining a polished smile while shielding herself behind the mask she had learned to wear. The children were settled in the second row with Carmen, and Lucia was directed toward the honorees section near the stage. Her heart beat erratically, not just from the ceremony but from the eerie sensation that she was being watched. 3 rows away, Robert Foster stood frozen. At 30, he was still the same imposing figure who graced magazine covers. But his eyes carried a sadness that hadn't been there 5 years ago. His suit was perfectly tailored, but it couldn't mask the burden he seemed to carry. Since taking full control of the family business after his father's death, he had become even more solitary and reclusive. But none of that mattered now. It was her, Lucia Hale, the woman he had never been able to forget, the one who haunted his dreams every night, the standard by which all other women paled in comparison. She was different now, not just from the passing years, but because of a new energy. There was a silent authority in the way she carried herself, a quiet confidence that made her even more captivating. When the hospital director took the stage to begin the awards, Robert's focus was entirely on Lucia. And then, it happened. And now, we invite Dr. Lucia Hale to receive the Innovation in Social Medicine Award for the creation and implementation of the Mothers of the Future project. The room fell silent. Lucia stood up gracefully, adjusting her lab coat as she walked toward the stage. Every step she took was a statement of dignity and purpose. Robert felt a jolt of pride mixed with profound regret, a sharp pang in his chest. The woman on stage was the same one he had loved, but she was also someone completely new. A woman who had turned her pain into purpose. When Lucia took the microphone, her voice was steady and clear. I accept this award not only as a doctor, but as a woman and a mother. The Mothers of the Future project was born from the understanding that motherhood in a vulnerable situation should not be a sentence of poverty or abandonment, but an opportunity to build a better future. Every mother served by our program represents an entire family that will have access to dignity, health, and hope. Robert swallowed hard. The woman before him was both familiar and foreign, a warrior who had transformed her struggle into something meaningful. I dedicate this award to my greatest inspirations, Lucia continued, her eyes scanning the second row. To my 4 children, who taught me that love is the most powerful force in the universe. Robert's gaze followed hers, and his world tilted. 4 children, 2 boys and 2 girls, all about the same age, all with features that he knew all too well. The unruly brown hair, the intense dark eyes, the shy smile, the golden curls. It couldn't be. But it was. When Lucia descended from the stage, holding her trophy, her children ran toward her. Caleb, the talkative one, exclaimed, "Mom, you were incredible." The older blonde girl proudly showed off Carmen's phone, saying, "We're proud of you, Mom." The more reserved boy whispered something to her, while the youngest girl, her golden curls tucked beneath Lucia's lab coat, hid her face in her mother's side. Robert stood frozen, unable to move, watching the scene unfold before him. People around him congratulated each other, but his focus was solely on Lucia. His chest burned with a mixture of longing and regret. Lucia turned in his direction. For a brief, eternal moment, their eyes met. Robert saw the hardness in her eyes, the way her shoulders tensed. She whispered something to her children, took the youngest girl's hand, and walked toward the exit. He couldn't let her leave again. He pushed through the crowd, apologies tumbling from his mouth as he tried to reach her. But when he arrived at the main hall, she was already in the elevator, surrounded by her children and Carmen. Their eyes met one last time before the doors closed. Robert stood there, the world around him buzzing, but he remained motionless. He needed to think. He needed answers. Outside the hospital, he leaned against the cold wall, pulling out his phone. "Marcos, I need you to find everything about Dr. Lucia Hale. Address, workplace, academic history, everything. It's urgent. I need it by tomorrow morning." He ended the call, his mind racing. 5 years of regret, 5 years of searching fruitlessly, 5 years of believing she had disappeared forever. And now, here she was, a doctor, a mother, independent. And maybe, just maybe, the children were his. There were a lot of people at the event. Lucas watched her with that penetrating look he had inherited along with his dark eyes. "Mom." His voice came out lower, almost a whisper. "Do we have a dad?" The question hit Lucia like a punch to the stomach. She slowly turned to her son, trying to maintain a serene expression. "Why are you asking that now, Lucas?" "Because at school, everyone talks about their dad, and we never do. You just say, 'We're your family,' and that's enough. But sometimes I wonder, does he exist? Where is he?" Lucia knelt down in front of her son, holding his small hands. "You do have a father, yes. But it's complicated, my love. Sometimes adults make mistakes. They get hurt and they drift apart. Does he know we exist?" The simple question carried a weight that almost brought her down. Lucia closed her eyes for a moment. "No, Lucas. He doesn't know." "Why?" "Because when you were babies in my belly, things happened that separated us, and I thought it was better to raise you alone." Lucas processed the information with the seriousness of a child who had matured too early. But now that we're big, couldn't he know? Lucia opened her mouth to answer, but she couldn't. How to explain to a 4-year-old that his father had thrown her out of the house, calling her a thief? How to say that she had built an entire life without him, precisely to protect her children from that rejection? It's too complicated to understand now, my love, but I promise that when you grow up a little more, I will explain everything. Lucas nodded, but she could see that the answer did not completely satisfy him. Can I sleep with you tonight, Mom? Of course you can. Later, with Lucas sleeping beside her and the trophy gleaming on the nightstand, Lucia stared at the ceiling in the dark. The reunion had been inevitable, she had always known. Thessaly was big, but the social and professional circles, especially in medicine, ended up crossing paths. She hadn't imagined it would be so difficult. Seeing Robert there, impeccable as always, had awakened a flood of emotions that she struggled to keep buried. She was no longer the same 25-year-old who had fallen madly in love with her boss. She was a woman who had cried alone during childbirth, who had spent nights awake with 4 crying babies while studying for college exams, who had built a brilliant career carrying her children on her hip. But a part of her, a small and stubborn part she hated, still remembered the taste of his kisses, the feeling of safety in his arms, the whispered promises in the dark. No, she thought firmly. I'm not going back to being that person. Lucia turned, on her side, pulling up the blanket. Tomorrow would be a new day. She had appointments, surgeries to tend, meetings about the project's expansion. There was no time for ghosts of the past. But as she fell asleep, she couldn't stop the image of Robert's dark eyes, so similar to Lucas's and Caleb's from Invading her dreams. And a few blocks away, in a luxurious penthouse overlooking the city, Robert remained awake on the balcony, a glass of untouched whiskey in his hands, watching the city lights blink like fallen stars. Tomorrow, he thought. Tomorrow he would find out the truth. Even if it cost him everything he had built in those 5 years, to forget Lucia Hale, even if it destroyed what was left of his heart. Chapter 3. The Truth and the Lie. St. Clara's Hospital woke up with the usual morning bustle. Lucia adjusted her stethoscope while reviewing the charts of her young patients, but her concentration was fragmented. 3 weeks had passed since the event, and the feeling of being watched had not left her. Flowers arrived daily at their reception desk, always accompanied by the same card. With respect and admiration, RF, she donated them to other hospital departments, without even reading the notes that came with them. Dr. Lucia. The secretary's voice sounded hesitant at the door of the office. There's someone who wants to talk to you. He says it's personal. Lucia looked up from her papers, a cold shiver running down her spine. Who is it? Robert Foster. He's been in the reception for 20 minutes. No. Lucia closed her eyes, taking a deep breath. She had imagined this moment would come, but she was not prepared. Not there in her territory, in the place where she had built her reputation and credibility. Dr. Lucia. The secretary spoke again, more quietly. He's accompanied by a boy. He seems to have brought him for a consultation. Lucia's blood ran cold. She got up quickly and went to the window overlooking the reception area. There he was, elegant, even in casual clothes, conversing quietly with a boy of about 8 who was holding his stomach with an expression of pain. It wasn't a setup. The child was really sick. You can send them in, she sighed, resigned. Minutes later, Robert entered the office holding the boy's hand. His eyes met hers immediately, and it was as if 5 years disappeared in the blink of an eye. He was thinner. Some lines of expression marked his face, but the magnetism was the same. Thank you for seeing me, he said. His voice was Herwerthen in her memory. This is Guile, the son of one of my employees. He's had abdominal pain for 2 days. Lucia approached the boy, kneeling to be at his height. Hi, Gilhair. I'm Dr. Hale. Can you tell me where it hurts? The boy pointed to the right side of his abdomen, and she immediately recognized the classic signs of appendicitis. While examining the child, she felt Robert's gaze burning her back. You need to take to the emergency room immediately, she said, turning to Robert. It's acute appendicitis. He's going to need surgery. The genuine concern on Robert's face surprised her. He knelt beside the boy. It's going to be okay, champ. The doctor is going to take care of you. All right. While she arranged the transfer and called the surgical team, Lucia watched as Robert reassured the child. There was a kindness there that she vaguely remembered, buried under layers of resentment. "Can I talk to you?" he asked when Gilhair was taken away by the nurses. "Please." Lucia hesitated. Part of her wanted to send him away to protect the peace she had won. But another part, a part that annoyed her deeply, wanted to hear what he had to say. 5 minutes they sat on the couches in the office, a safe distance between them. Robert moved, his hands, clearly nervous. "I know I have no right to be here," he began. "I know I hurt you in a way that may be unforgivable. But I need you to know I never stopped looking for you." "Why would you do that?" Lucia's voice came out colder than she intended. "Why?" "Because I realized my mistake. Because I found out the truth about Irene 2 years after you left." He took a deep breath. "And because I could never forget you." Lucia felt her chest tighten, but she kept her expression neutral. "You found out the truth?" "One of the security cameras that I didn't know existed caught Irene planting the jewelry in your closet." His voice trembled slightly. "Lucia, I fired her on the spot. I almost prosecuted her, but you had already disappeared and I didn't know how to find you." The silence stretched between them, heavy with 5 years of hurt and unsaid words. "Your children," he said finally. They are mine. Stop." Lucia cut him off, standing abruptly. "Your 5 minutes are up. Lucia, please." "No." She turned to face him, her eyes shining with a contained fury. "You think you can show up here after 5 years with flowers and apologies and that I'm just going to forget? You called me a thief. You humiliated me. You threw me out as if I were trash." Robert stood up too, his face contorted with pain. "I know, and I know I don't deserve forgiveness. But if they are my daughters, Caleb." Lucia's voice went up a notch. "You still doubt me?" "That's not it. It's just I need to be sure. I need to know if I can be their father. You had your chance to be a father. You lost it when you decided not to trust me." Lucia headed for the door, but his voice made her stop. "I love you." The words floated in the air like a confession torn from his chest. Lucia turned slowly. "You loved," she corrected, her voice breaking. "You loved a naive cleaning lady who believed in fairy tales. That person no longer exists. I love the woman you've become, too. The doctor, the mother, the warrior. Everything you are." "Get out," she whispered. "Please." Robert hesitated for a moment, then nodded slowly. "I'm not going to give up, Lucia. Not on you. Not on them." When he left, Lucia leaned against the closed door, her legs trembling. Part of her had wanted to hear those words for years of lonely nights. But another part, the part that had learned to protect itself, knew that love alone was not enough to heal certain wounds. Chapter 4. The Unveiling. 2 weeks later, the storm arrived. Lucia was preparing breakfast when her phone exploded with notifications, messages, calls, comments on social media she didn't even know existed. Carmen came running, her face pale, holding a magazine. "Darling, you have to see this." The cover of a gossip magazine displayed an old photo of Lucia in a cleaning uniform, entering Robert's mansion next to a recent photo of her at the hospital event. The title screamed cleaning lady, doctor, and opportunist. The scandal of Robert Foster's acts. The text alleged that Lucia had a clandestine relationship with Robert 5 years ago, that she got pregnant on purpose, but was caught stealing valuable jewelry before she could complete the scam. It also stated that the quadruplets who accompanied Lucia to the hospital event were born exactly 9 months after she was fired. "Mom." Caleb's voice sounded scared. The boy had appeared in the kitchen, followed by his siblings. "Why is Aunt Carmen crying?" Lucia quickly folded the magazine, but it was too late. The phone continued to ring incessantly. "It's just work, honey. You have breakfast? We're already late." But in the middle of the morning, the school director called. Some parents had seen the article and were concerned. It would be best if the children stayed home until the situation calmed down. In the afternoon, the director of the private clinic where Lutia worked part-time called her for an awkward conversation. Her contract would be temporarily suspended until the misunderstanding was cleared up. When she got home, she found journalists at the door of the building. She had to enter through the garage like a fugitive. Lucas, always observant, stared at her during dinner. "Mom, are you sad because of those men with cameras downstairs?" "It's work, my dear. It will pass." "They said your name several times," Livia said, playing with her food. "And they said a bad word." Lucia's heart broke. She had built an entire life to protect her children, and now they were exposed to this. That night, after putting the children to bed, Lucia locked herself in the bathroom and cried as if she hadn't cried in years. 5 years of hard work, of building a reputation, of fighting to be respected. All destroyed by a lie. 3 days later, when she thought the worst was over, the twist came. Carmen knocked on the door out of breath, holding her cell phone. "Lucia, you have to see this." The screen showed the country's most accessed news portal. The headline made Lucia's world spin. Video. Housekeeper confesses to framing fake theft. Lucia Hale is innocent. The video had been recorded on the security cameras of the Foster mansion 3 days earlier. It showed Robert confronting Irene in the office, and she clearly agitated, confessing everything. "Yes, I planted the jewelry in her closet. That was trying to steal you from me. I deserve to be by your side, not her. I gave my life for this house." The full confession was there. The revelation that she had planted the evidence, lied about seeing Lucia stealing, and manipulated the situation out of an unhealthy jealousy. In a few hours, the video had gone viral. The hashtags Justice for Lucia and Irene's exposed dominated social media. Journalists who'd previously attacked her were now calling asking for interviews to tell her side of the story. But the person who knocked on her door at the end of the day was not a reporter. Lucia. Robert was standing in the hallway, his face marked by exhaustion. "Can we talk?" She let him in, but kept her distance. He looked around the simple but cozy apartment, the children's drawings on the fridge, the toys organized in the corner of the living room. "I didn't know," he said without mincing words, about the second confession about what she said to the press. "You didn't know, or you didn't want to know." "When I found out she had leaked the story, I confronted her immediately. I had no idea she would continue to attack you." Lucia sat on the sofa too, tired to stand. "What do you want, Robert?" "I want to make it right. I want to help clear your name publicly. I want you to feel less guilty." He stopped as if he had been slapped. "Maybe, but I also want to meet my children." "How are you sure they're yours?" "Because I saw them. Because in their eyes I recognize my own. Because you would never lie about something like that." Lucia watched him for a long moment. There was sincerity there, but also desperation. "They don't know who you are," she said finally. "And I don't know if I'm ready for that conversation. I can wait. I can earn their trust slowly. And yours too, if you give me a chance." "A chance for what?" "To be the father I should have been from the beginning. To be the man you deserved 5 years ago." Before Lucia could answer, Lara appeared in the living room, rubbing her sleepy eyes. "Mom, who is he?" Robert froze. It was the first time he had seen one of his daughters up close. Lara had Lucia's golden curls, but something in her expression, in the way she tilted her head, was pure paternal inheritance. "He's a friend of Mommy's. Honey, go back to bed." "Hi," Robert said softly, kneeling down to the girl's level. "I'm Robert." Lara observed him with the natural curiosity of children. "You're handsome," she declared with the brutal honesty of a 4-year-old. "You look like Caleb." But Robert's heart almost exploded in his chest. "I do," he managed to say, his voice choked. "You do. You have the same eyes." She turned to Lucia. "Mom, can he show him my drawing?" Lucia hesitated but nodded. Lara ran to her room and returned with a sheet of paper full of colorful scribbles. "It's our family," she explained to Robert, pointing to 5 stick figures. "This is me. This is Livia. This is Caleb. This is Lucas. And this is Mommy. We are complete like this." Robert swallowed the lump in his throat as he looked at the drawing. 5 people, a family that had formed without him. It's very beautiful, he managed to say. You draw very well. Lara smiled proudly and ran back to her room. Robert remained kneeling on the floor, his hands trembling slightly. She's perfect, he whispered. All of them are perfect. They are. Lucia agreed, her voice softer than she intended. And they deserve stability. No more scandals. No more pain. I know. He stood up slowly, but they also deserve to know their father. Lucia closed her eyes. She knew this moment would come, but she was not prepared for the complexity of the feelings that invaded her. Seeing Robert with Lara had awakened something she had fought to keep buried. I need time, she said finally. As much time as you need, Robert said, heading for the door but stopping before he left. Lucia, thank you for raising them alone, for being both father and mother at the same time, for becoming this incredible woman. After he left, Lucia sat on the couch where moments before Lara had shown him the drawing. A complete family, the girl had said. But was it really complete? Or had a piece always been missing? And for the first time in 5 years, Lucia allowed herself to imagine what it would be like if that piece finally found its place. Even knowing that some puzzles once broken never fit back together in exactly the same way. Chapter 5. The Path to Forgiveness. 3 months after Irene's confession, Lucia's life had returned to a more normal rhythm. The private clinic had rehired her with formal apologies. The hospital had offered her a promotion, and the children had returned to school without being harassed by curious people. But the most significant change was Robert's visits. They started timidly, supervised, an afternoon in the park on Saturdays, always with Lucia present. Robert arrived with books, games, and small gifts that were not too ostentatious, but carried genuine affection. Caleb was the first to give in. The boy had inherited his father's fascination with cars, and when Robert showed up with a detailed model of a classic Mustang for them to assemble together, the boy's eyes lit up in a way Lucia hadn't seen in a long time. Is it just like the one you have in your garage? Caleb asked, fitting a tiny piece. Very similar. Maybe one day you can see it up close. Really? Is the enthusiasm was impossible to contain. Lucia watched from the park bench, her heart aching. Seeing Robert with their son was like watching 2 versions of the same person at different ages. The patience, the way he explained each step, the way Caleb naturally snuggled up next to him. Lucas was more difficult. The observant boy had noticed the changes in the routine, the whispered conversations between his mother and Carmen, the tension that still existed when Robert came for visits. Mom, he said one morning while getting his school backpack ready. Is Robert our father? Lucia almost dropped her cup of coffee. She had rehearsed this conversation 1,000 times, but when the moment came, the words escaped her. Why are you asking that, honey? Because he looks at us the same way you do. And because when he smiles, he looks just like Caleb. Lucas stared at her with that disconcerting seriousness. And you look different when he's here. Different how? Sad and happy at the same time. The children's perception never ceased to surprise her. Lucia knelt down in front of her son. Yes, Lucas. Robert is your father. Why didn't he live with us? Because sometimes adults make mistakes, my love. Mistakes that hurt a lot. And Mommy needed to raise you alone to protect you from that. Lucas processed the information carefully. But now he wants to be our real dad. He's trying to learn how. And you're going to let him? The simple question carried an immense weight. Lucia took a deep breath. I'm learning too, honey. To forgive, to trust again. It's difficult for adults sometimes. Lucas nodded as if he perfectly understood the complexity of human feelings. But can I call him Dad? The question hit Lucia like a sweet and sharp blade at the same time. If you want to, you can. That afternoon, when Robert came for his weekly visit, Lucas approached him with characteristic determination. Hi, Dad. Robert stopped mid-motion as if he had received an electric shock, his eyes filled with tears that he struggled to hold back. Hi, son, he managed to say, his voice choked. And when Lucas let himself be hugged, Lucia had to turn away so no one would see her own tears. Livia and Laura were won over little by little. Livia through books. Robert discovered that she loved stories and started bringing her illustrated volumes, reading to her with different voices for each character. Laura, more sensitive, was won over through music. Robert had played the piano in his youth, and when he found a small, abandoned keyboard in the park, he started teaching simple melodies to the girl. "Dad," Laura said one afternoon, as she plunked out a simple song, "are you going to live with us?" The question echoed in the almost empty park. Robert looked at Lucia, who was pretending to be engrossed in a medical book. "I would love to, but I need your mom to forgive me first." "Forgive what?" "Things that happened before you were born. I hurt your mom, and she needs to be sure that I won't hurt her again." Laura frowned, thoughtful. "But you don't seem mean. Sometimes good people do bad things, Princess. And when that happens, they need to work very hard to show they've changed. And are you doing that?" "I'm trying." Laura smiled as if the explanation made perfect sense. "Then I think Mom will forgive you soon. She's good at forgiving." Robert smiled. But when he looked at Lucia, he saw that she had stopped pretending to read. She was watching them with an expression that was impossible to decipher. The final shift came on a late October morning. Lucia was awakened by loud crying from the girl's room. Laura had a high fever, was vomiting, and her small body was shaking violently. It was a febrile seizure. "Carmen!" she yelled, picking up her daughter. "Call a taxi." But before Carmen could move, the phone rang. It was Robert Lucia. "I'm sorry to call so early, but I was passing by the building on my way back from a meeting and saw the lights were on. Is everything okay?" "Laura is sick. I need to take her to the hospital now. I'm coming up." In 2 minutes, he was at the door. He saw a desperate Lucia holding an unconscious Laura, and he didn't hesitate. "My car is downstairs. Let's go." The drive to the hospital was a blur of sirens, whispered prayers, and an ambulance meeting them halfway. Lucia held her daughter in the back seat, checking her vitals while Robert drove with surgical precision through the empty streets. "It's going to be okay," he repeated, more to himself than to Hare. "It's going to be okay." At the hospital, while Laura was being attended to by the medical team, Robert stayed in the hallway. He didn't try to console Lucia with empty words. He just stood there, a solid presence in case she needed him. At 5 near in the morning, when the doctors confirmed that Laura was stable, just a strong virus, nothing serious, Lucia finally collapsed. 5 hours of tension, fear, and adrenaline came out in desperate sobs, and Robert hugged her. He didn't ask for permission, didn't hesitate. He just wrapped his arms around her and let her cry on his chest, as she had done so many times 5 years ago. "I almost lost her," Lucia sobbed. "If it had been something more serious, but it wasn't. She's fine. She's strong, just like her mother." "I'm so afraid, Robert, of not being enough, of failing them." "You are the best mother I have ever seen," he said, gently brushing her hair from her face. "And you are no longer alone." When Laura woke up a few hours later, she found her parents sitting together by the bed, not hugging, but close, united by their concern and love for her. "Dad," the weak voice whispered, "you stayed here all night." "I did, and I'll stay as long as you need me to. And whenever I get sick, always, and on other days too." Robert looked at Lucia, who for the first time in months didn't immediately look away. "If your mom lets me," he said. "If she thinks I deserve a chance." Lara turned to her mother with that seriousness that was sometimes startling. "Mom, do you think he deserves it?" Lucia was silent for a long moment, watching Robert's tired face, the way he held Lara's small hand with infinite delicacy. "I think everyone deserves a second chance," she said finally, "if they prove they've changed." "And has he proved it?" "He's proving it." Robert closed his eyes as if saying a silent prayer. "Then I think Mom will forgive you soon. She's good at forgiving, and I guess I have to learn faster." He laughed, because I want him to live with us. 6 months later, the family was in therapy. Dr. Marina was a psychologist specializing in family reconstruction, and the sessions happened once a week, sometimes with everyone together, sometimes just with Lucia and Robert. "How do you feel about the forgiveness process?" Dr. Marina asked in a session with just the adults. It's harder than I imagined, Lucia admitted. It's not just about forgiving what happened. It's about learning to trust again, to believe that it won't happen again. And you, Robert, I understand. Her hesitation. I broke her trust in a terrible way, but I'm willing to work for as long as it takes to rebuild it. And how are the children dealing with all this? Better than us. Lucia laughed. Sometimes they're more mature than adults. It was true. Caleb had started inviting Robert to school meetings. Lucas asked for help with his math homework. Livia showed him her new drawings. Lara simply snuggled up on his lap during movies as if she had always done that. Maybe Dr. Marina suggested you're ready for the next step. What would that be? Robert asked. Living together, not as a couple necessarily, but as a family. Lucia felt her stomach turn. I don't know if I'm ready. It doesn't have to be forever, the psychologist continued. It can be an experiment for a few weeks to see how it works in practice. Robert leaned forward in his chair. I would buy a new house for all of us. Not my house. Not yours. A new place that would be ours. And if it doesn't work out, then I'll move out, he said simply. And we'll continue with the visits as before. Lucia looked out the office window, watching the people pass on the street. Families, couples, children, normal lives without the complexity that hers carried. Can I think about it? Of course. That night, Lucia gathered the children in the living room. It was time for a serious conversation. What do you think about moving to a new house? A house where Dad would live with us? The reaction was instantaneous. Caleb jumped off the sofa. Lucas smiled openly. Livia clapped her hands and Lara threw herself into her mother's lap. Really, Mom? Caleb asked. A house with a big yard and a room for each of us, Livia completed. Slow down, Lucia laughed. Let's take it slowly. It would be an experiment first to see if we can be a real family. We already are a family, Lucas said. Pragmatic as always, we just need Dad to live with us officially. What if you fight? Lara asked, worried. If we fight, we'll talk and work it out like families do. And if you can't work it out, Lucia hesitated. It was the question she herself was asking. Then we'll find another solution. But I promise that you will always have a mom and a dad living together or apart. The children look at each other as if having a silent conversation. We want to try, Lucas said, speaking for all of them. We want a complete family. The house that Robert bought was in a quiet neighborhood. It was not a mansion, but it was spacious with a large yard, 4 bedrooms for the children, an office for Lucia, and a music room where Robert had installed a real piano. The move happened on a Saturday morning with the help of Carmen and some friends. The children ran through the new house, choosing rooms, exploring every corner with characteristic excitement. Mom, Lara yelled from the backyard. There's a swing set and a small pool. Livia completed. Lucia watched everything from the porch, her heart divided between joy and apprehension. Robert approached, carrying the last box. Regretful. Terrified, she admitted, but not regretful at all. It's a beginning. On that first night, after putting the children to bed in their new rooms, Lucia and Robert sat on the porch, watching the city lights. Thank you, she said suddenly. For what? For not giving up. For persisting. Even when he made everything difficult. You had every right to not make it easy. I know, but still. Thank you. They were silent for a moment, listening to the night, sounds of the neighborhood. Lucia H. I love you. Still do. Always have. She closed her eyes, letting the words sink into her chest. I know, she whispered. And I'm learning to love again. To trust in love. We can learn together. I think so. And for the first time in 5 years, when Robert held out his hand, Lucia took it. A year later, in the same auditorium at St. Clara's Hospital where everything had begun, Lucia took the stage again. This time, not to receive an award, but to give a talk on resilience and family reconstruction. The Mothers of the Future project had expanded to 5 hospitals. Lucia had become a national reference in social medicine, and her personal story, which she shared with courage and transparency, inspired women across the country. The second chance, she said into the microphone looking out at the packed auditorium, is not about forgetting the past. It's about transforming pain into wisdom, mistakes into learning, and mistrust into a more mature and conscious trust. Forgiveness is not a single act, it's a daily choice, and when we choose to forgive, we are not just freeing those who hurt us, we are freeing ourselves to live fully again. In the front row, the 4 children watched her with pride. Caleb wore a small tie just like his dad's. Lucas held a notebook where he was writing down his mother's important lines. Livia held a sign that read, "My mom is amazing." And Lara held Robert's hand, who couldn't take his eyes off Lutia. When the speech was over, to a round of emotional applause, Lutia came down from the stage. She expected to find her family in the hall, but they weren't there. She followed the sounds coming from the hospital's outer garden and stopped at the entrance, her heart racing. Robert was kneeling on the lawn, surrounded by the 4 children. In his hand, a small blue box. "Lucia Hale," he said, his voice trembling with emotion. "You taught me that true love survives mistakes, that a family can be rebuilt on a stronger foundation, and that some people are worth any battle." The children were silent, but their smiles lit up their faces. "Do you want to marry us?" Caleb asked, breaking the protocol. Robert laughed, tears running freely down his cheeks. "Do you want to be my wife, and let me officially be the father of these 4 amazing people forever?" Ludia looked around. Some hospital staff had stopped to watch. Carmen was crying openly. Dr. Marina was filming everything on her cell phone. "Say, yes, Mom," Livia encouraged. "Please," Lara completed. "You're taking too long," Lucas said, pragmatic as always. Lucia knelt down too, getting on the same level as Robert and the children. "Yes," she said simply. "I want to marry you, all of you." The kiss was accompanied by hugs from 4 excited children, laughter, tears, and applause from strangers who had stopped to watch. When they separated, Lara pulled on her mother's dress. "Mom, now we can make a new family drawing." "Of course, my love. This time there will be 6 people." "6?" Lucia frowned. "There are 5 of us." Lara smiled with that mysterious wisdom that only children possess. "It's because when people really love each other, someone else always comes along to love too." And as if it were a prophecy, 8 months after the wedding, Lucia found out she was pregnant with twins. But that's another story. Forno. It was enough to know that sometimes families break to rebuild stronger. That forgiveness is a superpower. That true love has no expiration date. And that when 2 people truly belong together, the universe conspires for them to find their way back to each other. Even if it takes 5 years. Even if they have to go through pain. Even if they have to learn that mature love is stronger than young love. Because it survived the storm. The perfect family. A year later, the laughter echoed in the backyard of their new home, mixing with the splash of water in the pool and the excited shouts of the children. It was a typical Saturday for the Foster family. Chaotic, noisy, and perfect. Lucia watched from the porch, gently rocking Peter in her arms while his twin sister, Helena, slept in the stroller beside him. At 1 year and 3 months, the babies were the joy of the house. Peter had his father's intense dark eyes, and Helena's golden curls were starting to appear, a maternal inheritance. "Mom!" Caleb yelled from the pool, now 7 years old and even more like Robert. "Dad said he's going to teach us how to change the oil in the car after lunch. Only if you finish your homework first," she replied, smiling. Lucas emerged from the water. "Always the most responsible. I already finished mine, and I helped Livia with math." Then Livia, who had discovered a passion for books that rivaled her love for drawing, waved from the lounge chair where she was reading a graphic novel. "I finished too, and I drew a new family picture for the teacher." "How many people this time?" Lucia asked, remembering Lara's prophecy. 8, the girl replied proud, counting Grandma Carmen and Grandpa Miguel. Miguel, Robert's father, had reappeared in his son's life after the birth of the twins. The 65-year-old man, who had withdrawn after his wife's death, found a new purpose in the noisy, numerous family. He visited every week, always with gifts and stories to tell. Lara, the 6-year-old philosopher, was sitting on the edge of the pool, swinging her feet in the water, observing everything with that characteristic, thoughtful look. "What are you thinking about, Princess?" Robert asked, coming out of the kitchen with a tray of lemonade. I was remembering when we weren't a complete family, she said. Serious? It seems like a long time ago. It does, he agreed, sitting beside her. Do you remember what it was like before? A little. I remember Mom was sad sometimes when she thought we weren't looking. And I remember you weren't there. Robert swallowed the lump in his throat. Even after 2 years of marriage, there were still moments when the reality of almost losing all of this hit him like a punch. And how do you feel now? Laura smiled with that illuminated way that melted hearts. Complete. As if all the pieces of the puzzle are in the right place. On the other side of the yard, Carmen appeared carrying a shopping bag. "Grandma's here!" the children shouted in unison, running to greet her. Carmen, now officially a grandmother of 6, had moved to a smaller house in the same neighborhood. At 6th, she was more active than ever, helping with the babies and spoiling the older ones with the experience of someone who had raised Lucia almost alone. "I brought ingredients for the chocolate cake you asked for," she announced immediately, surrounded by the children. "And I'm going to help make it," Livia said, always eager to learn new things. "Me too," Caleb insisted. "You're just going to make a mess of my kitchen." Carmen laughed. "But come on, let's make the biggest mess this house has ever seen." As the children ran inside with Carmen, Lucia and Robert were left alone on the porch with the babies. Peter had fallen asleep in his mother's lap, and Helena was slowly waking up, making those adorable noises that babies make. "Can you believe it?" Robert asked, sitting next to his wife. "Believe what? All of this? Our life? 2 years ago I thought I had lost you forever." Lucia snuggled into her husband's shoulder, breathing in the familiar scent that now comforted her instead of bringing back painful memories. "Sometimes it feels like a dream," she admitted. "Especially when I look at them and see how happy they are. And you? Are you happy?" The question came in a whisper, as if he still feared the answer. "Happier than I ever thought possible," she answered sincerely. "Not a naive happiness like before. A conscious happiness built day by day with a lot of work. Remember our first fight after we got married about the dishes?" He laughed. "You said I wasting to buy your forgiveness by washing all the dishes, and you said I was nitpicking because I couldn't accept that you had really changed. And we were both right. That's why it worked, because we stopped trying to be right and started trying to be together." Helena started to fuss, and Robert reached out to pick her up. "Come here, princess. Daddy's here," watching her husband with their daughter in his arms. Lucia had one of those moments of deep gratitude that sometimes surprised her. Life had taught her that mature love was different from young love, less fiery, perhaps, but much more solid, built on honesty, genuine forgiveness, and the daily choice to be dedicated to one another. "Berter, thank you for what this time for fighting for us, for not giving up when I made everything difficult, for becoming the man I needed you to be." He leaned in to kiss her, a soft kiss that carried years of history, forgiveness, and fulfilled promises. "And thank you," he whispered against her lips, "for giving me a second chance, for raising these amazing people alone, for becoming this extraordinary woman." "Mom, Dad," Lucas's voice interrupted them. "Grandma Carmen says you have to come see something." They went into the house to find an organized chaos in the kitchen. Carmen was coordinating Operation Cake like an experienced chef. While Caleb mixed ingredients with scientific concentration, Livia decorated cupcakes with artistic precision, and Laura licked the batter spoon with the seriousness of someone performing a task. "Look what we made," Livia said, showing them a cupcake decorated with blue and yellow frosting. "There are family colors." "Family colors?" Lucia asked, intrigued. "Yeah," Caleb explained. "Blue for Dad's, Lucas's, and my eyes. Yellow for your hair, Livia's, and Laura's." "What about the babies?" Robert asked. "Oh, they're the mix of everything," Laura said philosophically. "Peter has the blue eyes, but he's going to have brown hair. Helena's going to have yellow hair, but blue eyes too. They're proof that we're a real family," Lucas completed. "All different, but alike in what matters." Carmen wiped her hands on her apron, her eyes shining with emotion. "You know what makes me happiest in all of this?" she said. "Seeing that you two didn't just find each other again. You became better people together." "What do you mean, Grandma?" "Livia, asked. Your mom has always been strong, but now she's learned to accept help. And your dad has always been determined, but now he's learned to be patient. Together, they are more complete. That night, after putting all the children to bed, a process that now involved 6 beds, 3 different stories, and at least 4 cups of water, Lucia and Robert met again on the porch. The sky was starry, and the silence of the neighborhood wrapped around them like a hug. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. "How funny life is. 5 years ago, if someone had told me I'd be here married to you with 6 children, I would have thought it was impossible. And now I can't imagine it being any other way." Robert pulled her closer, and she snuggled into his lap, as she had learned to do again. "Lucia, I love you. Not just what you were or what you became. I love what we became together. I love it too," she whispered. "I love our mess, our chaos, our 6 impossible children, our life that never stops." "And would you love something else?" he asked with a playful tone she knew. "Well, Robert Foster," she said, pulling away to look him in the eyes. "Don't tell me you're thinking about more children. I'm just asking hypothetically. 6 children, Robert." 6. But Laura said that when people really love each other, someone else always comes along. "Laura is 6 years old." He laughed, kissing the top of her head. Okay. 6 is perfect. It is perfect," she agreed. And it was in the house. The children slept peacefully, dreaming of adventurous and cupcakes. The babies breathed softly in their cribs. Carmen rested in her small house, happy to see the family she helped raise finally complete. And on the porch under the stars, 2 hearts that had been lost and found again beat in the same rhythm, planning not for more children, at least not yet, but for more years of happiness built day by day with patience, forgiveness, and unbreakable love. Because in the end they had learned the most important lesson of all. True families are not perfect. They are resilient. They don't avoid storms. They learn to dance in the rain. And when they looked to the future that night, they saw only infinite possibilities of love, laughter, and a happiness that this time they were sure was there to stay.